This Week in the Boardroom, brought to you by Corporate Board Member and host NYSE Euronext, along with Governance Knowledge Partner Paul Weiss and contributing partners National Investor Relations Institute and the Society of Corporate Secretaries and Governance Professionals.
Welcome to this edition of This Week in the Boardroom. I'm TK Kerstetter with Corporate Board Member, and once again we're on one of our unique remote shoots. And this week we are at the University of San Diego at the Corporate Directors Forum, and it is a Southern California group that has a great organization that works on governance with a lot of the companies and investors in this part of California. The reason this is a special event for us is that we have the pleasure of having one of the speakers that is at the conference. And we're actually going to be talking about an organization that is global in the nature of its title. It's the International Corporate Governance Network. And it has the support of many countries across the world, including the U.S. And with us is Christy Wood, who is the chair of what's called the ICGN. And she was going to be talking about a lot of the global impacts of how it affects boards. But I think before that, I'm always surprised that more U.S. directors are not knowledgeable about what the ICGN is. So a great place for us to start is, let's first talk about what the ICGN is.
Well, thank you, TK. It's a pleasure to be here. And the ICGN is a 15-year-old organization made up of about 550 members. Those 550 members are primarily represented in over 50 countries. They represent the largest institutions in the world, accumulating about 18 trillion US dollars in assets under management. So you can think of it as the largest pension plans in the world. And the ICGN really exists to serve three important functions. First is a networking forum for owners of public company shares, and we have 3 conferences a year. Our next conference actually is in London on March 19th and 20th, and then in Rio in June 25th through the 27th is our annual meeting where we'll have over 500 people. So we have conferences to discuss issues that are important to global investors of public companies. And then in addition to that, we exist to write best practice guidance for global share owners of public companies. So we write best practice guidance on risk oversight, executive remuneration, director remuneration, anti-corruption standards for emerging markets around the world and frankly all markets. And then we have global principles for corporate governance, which most of our members abide by as they look around the world. And then the last thing we do is we engage in advocacy on behalf of our members. And most of that advocacy is to engage regulators and standard setters around the world on accounting topics, on all sorts of regulatory issues. The European Commission and the SEC would be 2 notable entities that we would engage to represent share owners' interests on regulatory matters. And so that's our primary function, and it's a terrific organization that I think does a lot of good by share owners. We are a nonprofit based in London, and but of course our board and our members are all around the world.
So let's see if we can tie that back. Most of our audience would be U.S. public company directors. So how does your organization, how would they be linking with them through through your best practices and through your programs?
Well, we actually write best practice guidance on global corporate governance principles and actually director remuneration that our members, who are, I will call them primarily the largest pension plans in the world, might use to sort of look at how these directors are managing the companies and overseeing the companies that they have. And of course, we write risk oversight guidelines as well. So we could be a resource to those directors. And I guess we like to think of ourselves as being a global version of what the Council of Institutional Investors might be in the United States, except we don't have the direct participation of labor unions. It's pretty much corporates and independent academics or people who are in charge with the responsibility for executing proxies around the world or for investment management of public assets. So while I would say the director component of our membership is not high, it's growing, and we very much invite directors to become a member of the ICGN. It doesn't actually cost a lot. It's an individual membership is £500. So you know, there's a lot of value there, and we have a very robust process of engaging our members in the committee structure where we actually write our best practice guidelines.
Well, you obviously, anybody that's global would benefit from, since you have 50 companies represented, you're looking out on everybody's interest,
right?
You know, on that. So it does give a company that's global a better, because they're going to have operations in different countries and want to acquire companies in different countries. So that certainly makes sense. In all your travels through these representation of these 50 companies, and you yourself serve on a board and serve on an audit committee, so you're able to really understand the dynamics of what's going on. When you absorb all that, what makes you nervous when you look at the governance in the boardroom and what's happening and more shareholder influence and things like that? So what first comes to mind when you think about what concerns you might have?
Well, different things concern me in different geographies. You know, if you were to say what concerns you in Europe, I think is, you know, one of the things that concerns me in Europe, for example, is the fact that I think that there's too much of a tendency to look to regulators to solve problems, and politicians want to be seen as doing something to fix the financial crisis. And I'm not sure that the source of the fix is really among the politicians and the regulators. In the United States, I would think one of the things that concerns me is the polarization between owners and the boards. There are certain rights, like the ability to elect and remove directors, that we take for granted in other countries. And because those powers exist there, you never really have to use them because everybody knows that you could do it. So you really never have to threaten to do it because it's kind of taken for granted that everybody's got to behave, you know, responsibly. And in the United States, there's a lot more polarization. I think that's one thing that concerns me. I think the lack of diversity and the bit of, you know, kind of, I think, you know, entrenchment in some boards concerns me a little bit. In the United States, some of the European countries have now gone to quotas. I hope we don't have to do that in the United States, you know, in order to get board diversity. I think the other thing that concerns me would probably be risk management, you know, at some of the companies, because I'm concerned that some of the regulation has caused perhaps too much regulatory impingement upon the operations of companies. I think we have to be careful to find the right balance, especially with financial companies. We don't want them to take the world down the tubes, but we also need to allow them to grow. You know, and so restricting their use of capital and enforcing higher capital requirements will, of course, you know, cause the world not to grow. And if we don't have loan growth, we can't grow our way out of a recession, remember. So, I mean, I think we have to really be careful about some of the regulation that's come to pass here.
I know you guys, as an organization, develop projects and committees that are covering pertinent topics. So give our audience sort of a clue in the next 12 months, what are the big issues that the ICGN is going to be working on, either in project form or committee form?
Sure. Well, we've just, in the last, I would say 6 months, launched our risk oversight guidelines, and those are available on our website at icgn.org. And in London, we will be launching our guidelines on political contributions. And of course, that's a hot topic in the United States, given the Citizens United case. But we're also going to be launching what we call our model mandate, which is guidance for investment managers and asset owners on what their relationship should be on a contractual basis. And I think that's an important guideline. We're very active in opining on stewardship codes around the world, and the ICGN is very involved. And in fact, I'm the deputy chairman of the International Integrated Reporting Council, where we are an advocate for integrating non-financial factors into financial reporting. And that doesn't just mean environmental, social, and governance factors. It also means that we think there should be more integration of intellectual property and goodwill disclosure of companies into financial reports. And so, those are the sorts of things that the ICGN is very involved in and that we advocate for on behalf of share owners.
Well, Christy, there's no question that we like best practices and we like advocacy. So we'll encourage your organization on. We hope this session has helped at least the U.S. Board members to understand the ICGN better. And they can go to icgn.org to get some of the information on risk and the other things that you're working on. And I want to thank you for taking the time to join us out of your busy schedule. And that will conclude this edition of This Week in the Boardroom. We hope that you'll be back again next week when we take a look at another critical issue that will help you be a better board member or a better committee member. We'll see you then.
Join us again next week for This Week in the Boardroom, brought to you by Corporate Board Member and host NYSE Euronext, along with Governance Knowledge Partner Paul Weiss and contributing partners National Investor Relations Institute and the Society of Corporate Secretaries and Governance Professionals.